Good morning and welcome to You Math and Me. I'm George Randall and today we're going to talk about integers, whole numbers and their opposites, and the number 0. And what I mean by that is 9, negative 9, 10, negative 10, and so on. Okay, and today, with the usage of these negative numbers, we're going to talk about, again, basic facts, but addition, subtraction, multiplication, and if we have time, division of negative numbers, or in this case, integers. And yes, each operation comes with some rules. And we're going to use a few symbols again, negative, positive, okay? And with that, we're going to look at some basic addition. And let's say that we have what's called, well, let's real quick look at a number line. And we have 0 in the middle. And to the right of 0, all the numbers are positive. And to the left of 0, all the numbers are negative. And they are equidistant. But this is, again, a freelance here. But it's a positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, positive 4, and so on. And on this side, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, to infinity. And again, the distance is from 0 is equal units away. Okay. So again, if we add two positive numbers, in this case, 3 plus 1 plus a positive 1, we get a positive 4. And what we did is 1, 2, 3 plus 1 more, and we got positive 4. Now, let's look at a negative number, or adding a positive and a negative number. But first, let's look at adding two negative numbers. Process is the same. And we're adding these. Count to the left, 1 unit. Count to the left, 2 more units. 1, 2, and this should be negative 3. Simple, simple, simple. Has not changed. You just have a negative sign or a positive sign. Now, rules. A positive 4, and we have erasers. Start over. And we're going to add a negative 1. What's the answer? Is it 5, 3, what have you? Now with the number line, and we kept it simple, we're going to count 4 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to come back 1 unit. So the answer is positive 3. Now, what they tell us, as far as rules, there's a symbol called absolute value. Okay? And when you see this particular problem, you take the absolute value of 4 and the absolute value of negative 1. I'm sorry, and this should be a positive 4. And when you say absolute value of a number of units, 4, 1. And then you perform the operation. In this case, you subtract the smaller from the larger and get 3, and then bring back that symbol. Because again, we're not going to be able to draw a number line that has 1,556. We need to know the rules in order to do these problems. Okay? Let's look at the absolute. Let's look at subtracting, in this case, minus 2, subtract a plus 1. Okay? And again, we would count units in the negative direction, 1, 2, and then back 1. However, that's not correct, because you can't subtract a positive from a negative. In this case, you repeat the first number, change this positive 1 to a negative 1, and add. And the answer is, again, negative 3. A little different. Okay? All righty. So again, you could take the absolute value of these, negative 2, positive 1, and that would be 2 plus 1, and that's 3, but then give the sign of the larger number. Oops, I'm having a good time this morning. Should be negative 3. Okay? All right. So basically, we've looked at addition of negative and positive integers, using the number line as an example for some smaller problems, and also taking into account some rules when we're utilizing situations inclusive of absolute value. Okay, so let's look at subtraction. A positive 4 subtract a negative 3. Rules. Repeat. Change this sign to a positive 3. And add. And you get a positive. Now the way you check this time, you take 7, a positive 7, minus a positive 3, and you get a positive 4. That's not what we do over here. Look, with just regular numbers, we add these two and get 5. That's why I often talk about math has its own language. And if we don't know these things, we won't be able to do a more difficult problem as we go forward. So again, just with regular numbers, rational numbers, 5 minus 1 is 4. we add 4 to 1 to get 5. Over here with positive integers, in this case, or first we were subtracting a negative 3. The rule says to change the sign to a positive 3 and then add. To check it, we take the positive 7, subtract 3, and we get 4. Or, in the case of where it was, we could also do this. Look at this. We take our positive and we add the original negative 3. And again, if we went out 5, 6, 7, and then went back 1, 2, 3. That's what this is going to add up to. And that's where we started. Lots of ways to check it. And this last step over here is more like what we do over here. Right? Our answer, we add this to get that. Okay. So we've looked at some subtraction and some addition. Now, if you have any issues with this, you can reach me at gerandall22@gmail.com. And when we come back, we'll talk about multiplication and division of integers. Thank you. Welcome back, and we're going to look at some multiplication and hopefully some division of integers. Again, positive, negative numbers. Before, again, I list these positive, negative, and we'll put a little times table in there. And whenever you multiply, whether it's this way, a positive times a negative times a positive, your answer is going to be negative. Here's one for you. A negative times a negative. Is that going to be a negative? Rule says positive. Language. And of course, a positive times a positive is going to be a positive. Okay, so there we have it. Positive times a negative is a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a positive is a positive. Okay. Nothing else changes. We're back to the basic multiplication facts that are so important for us. So again, 91. In this case, negative 91 times a positive 9. My favorite number, 9. 9 times 1, 9 times 9, 81. But what did we say earlier? A positive times a negative is a negative. Is this right? I think so, but we can check. Remember, we talked about that number 9. We add these guys up. 8 plus 1 is 9, plus 9 is 18. And 1 plus 8 is 9. So more than likely our multiplication is correct. But again, the answer to this particular problem was a negative 809. So that would be 819 units to the left of 0. Way to the left. Okay? So, and we can use 25, which is positive, and 5, which is positive. Which is positive. And we said that a positive times a positive is a positive. 25, carry 2, 10 plus 2, 125. And that answer is a positive 125. Now we could take that negative 819 and add 125. We're way over to the left, and we're going to come back 125 units. Should our answer be positive or negative? I think negative. And I throw this in here because you're going to eventually get, in all shapes and forms, order of operations. First thing that we did, let's look at it. We had 91, which was positive, times a negative 9. And that was 819. And that was a negative 819. Now, in the next step, when you're reading the problem, it could say, multiply a negative 9 times a positive 91 and add, we had 5 times 25, and it was 25 positive times a positive 5. And that was a positive. And then add 819 negative plus a positive 125. And again, it's absolute value, you keep the same numbers and subtract. 4, borrow 1, 11, 9, and this became 7, 6. And then go back to the original with the larger absolute value and put the negative sign. So our answer, I need to put this up here so you can see it, is 819 subtract, my cameraman's could take care of me. Yes, there you go. Again, 819, negative 819's absolute value is 819. Absolute value of a positive 125 is 125. Subtract, and you come up with an answer of 694, and then you go back and put the negative sign. Okay? So we went through basically an order of operations test or problem. You would have had it looking something like this. See if I can write that up here. positive 91 times, I'm sorry, yeah, it was, times a negative 9. I'm going to get that out of the way. Plus the quantity positive 25 times positive 5 equals and this was my first topic, order of operation. And again, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And what does that mean? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division from left to right, whichever comes first. Addition, subtraction from left to right, whichever comes first. You gotta know this English, this language right here, because when you get variables involved, it's gonna be interesting. But this introduced us to not only negative and positive numbers for multiplication, it also gave us an opportunity to look at order of operation again. Okay? Let's look at one more part of this, and that's division. Again, the basic function or process of division hasn't changed. We just have to know when our answer or quotient is positive or negative. So again, we're going to have my favorite number. And we're making this easy. We've been working with the same numbers today, but it's all about the process. And what did I say earlier? A negative times a negative equals a positive. And we got a positive in here, so what's our answer going to be in? Negative. All right, so here we go. 9 and 81. 9 times. 9 into 9. 1 time. No remainder. And the reason, again, that this has to be a negative 91, because the rule says a negative times a negative is a positive. And again, look at this. Negative 91 times a negative 9. 81. A negative times a negative is a positive. The basic math is the same. The rules are very important. Okay? Okay. Let's look at 169 divided by 13. And we're going to make both of these negative. And we said, when we first started, that a negative times a positive was a negative. And so we're dividing, and our divisor is negative, and inside the house is a negative 169. So our answer should be what? Positive. Because we must multiply our answer, called the quotient, times our divisor, and it's negative. So a positive times a negative is a negative. 13 into 16 once. Subtract. And 13 and 39, 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. And our answer is a positive 13. We check. Three times 3, 9. 3 times 1, 3. 1 times anything is that thing. 9, 6, 1. And a negative times a negative is a negative. What's in the house? A negative 169. Well, we've hit just briefly addition, subtraction, multiplication and division of integers, negative and positive. If you have any issue, you can reach me at gerandall22@gmail.com. And I thank you for today. Oops, and we'll see you next time. God, my big feet.